All right, welcome to what is truly the final episode. Actually, it might not be, who knows? But no, it is. This will be the last one of the Australian Lawn Garden Podcasts Makers Month series. I've drawn the line here, people. And we have Ben back again. You would have heard in the last podcast, if you listen all the way through to the Bushranger one, that we spent so much time talking about blades and everything else and mowers and all that sort of stuff that we ran out of time for Gravely. And so we're going to do a dedicated episode to that because there is some very secret, no one's ever heard about this before, battery stuff that's not even on the website that Ben's going to put into this podcast. Hi, Ben. How you going? Welcome again.
I'm doing well, thank you. Had my hair cut this time.
You did, I can see. And you're very distracted because you've been actually putting in a lot of effort into organising what's going to be shown on the screens today.
It's a little bit off-putting not being able to see you in the background actually talking to you, so I don't know where to look. Makes it a little bit harder.
We can see him, but he can't see us because he's got a share screen. I'm going to put that on screen on for a second, but people, I want to show you. Now, in the last podcast, I was incredibly critical, scathingly critical of the name of one of the Bushranger mowers, which was, I have it here, it was 53AL7IMSPB. And I said, you could just call it something like Gerald, couldn't you? As a joke. And lo and behold, on your screens right now, Bushranger for today only. So this will not be up when you listen to the podcast. But for today only, they have genuinely changed the name of the mower on the website to Gerald. Bushranger Gerald self-propelled lawnmower. If you guys listen on Spotify, you can jump on YouTube just for the first minute or two and actually see this on the screen. I'm going to cut this in as well of the other podcasts because we record these and release them later. But that's funny. Thanks for doing that. I love that you put the effort in for that one.
Yeah, it's more to prove that we do listen. So the point that we're trying to prove there is that we do take your feedback seriously and we do try and listen. So I thought that would be a good little token gesture to prove that.
Well, what was funny is I said, can we put this up on the day that this podcast comes out? And you told me you couldn't because it wrecks your ordering process. By changing the name of the website, it kind of stuffs up other things in the background, right?
Correct. So that you're able to click and collect those products. So that is actually our live part number, which goes through to our system. So go on to the website, you hit click and collect, you can order that product. Unfortunately, Gerald's not a live SKU number, so that makes it a little bit of a challenge for people that want to buy that mower to order them. So, but yeah, it's there, and again, it was just to show that we're listening.
Well, basically, people, what they've done is they've risked confusing people for the joke. I love that. That is dedication to the joke. Like, they've risked you might lose a sale. What if you lose a $1,899 sale, $1,849 sale, sorry, from this joke?
I'm more concerned that people are going to come back and actually request that we do this full time and having to change the part number in our system to Gerald. Actually,
people do it. Do it. Come on, people, do it. All right, I'm removing that from the screen. We don't need that anymore. What I am going to put on the screen is, it's just us. You still can't see the screen. It's just us. I haven't put your screen on yet there, Ben. But I will just introduce, before we talk about this, what's going to happen in this podcast. Gravely have got some brand new products. Have they been talked about at Equip Expo? Have they been talked about in the Australian market before? Where are we at with these?
Yeah, they have. So the EV was actually launched in the US. I'm going to put it out there that they were probably one of the very first EV manufacturers, and they've been working on it for a time. It's just never been really brought into the Australian market properly. And the previous distribution partners with Gravely, I feel, struggled to get the model mix and the range right. And I think it was very hard for people to actually buy the product. And there's a huge training module for the retailer to actually be able to sell the EVs, because diagnostics, troubleshooting and all of those things are so different with the product compared to your standard gasoline product. So if you think about all the shops that you purchase this product from, all of those mechanics are small engine mechanics primarily. It's the odd one here and there that's done other trades, but that's primarily what they're there for. These are dedicated electrical units, so it's a completely different trade. And the training that Aaron's provide for us is in depth into that. So it takes a lot for a retailer to actually even be able to sell these. They're not able to be purchased through every Gravely dealer. However, you can go in and speak to every Gravely dealer about getting prices, availability, and how you would go about buying one. But it doesn't mean that they're all allowed to sell them. I hope that makes sense. Yep. There's a new 300 series, 500 series that was new to equip this year. And I've got that in my catalogue, but I don't have it on the screen. But I thought today we would concentrate on the EVs because realistically the theme of your series has been around battery, and there's definitely enough time just to speak about the Gravely EV product. So yeah, we are there.
Well, I do feel like you're letting us behind the scenes. So what we're going to put on the screen, people, is actually part of the sales training for this. This is like, I can't, Ben has to control this from his screen because he cannot even give me access. Apparently, if he gives me access, I can order parts and that would be fun. And he kind of doesn't, he doesn't trust me. Look at him. I wouldn't trust me either. He's worried about me ordering something stupid. But no, like this is proper behind the scenes stuff. But we're going to blur out anything you're not supposed to see, but show you some of the behind the scenes stuff of what's really going on. This might be something you might want to watch on YouTube, but we're going to describe it as best as possible for the listeners because there's some pretty interesting stuff going on with this battery stuff, these battery ride-on units that are not normal in every other thing. And we're going to talk about stats. We're going to talk about some other stuff. So I'm going to pause this now, and we're going to, in the background, set this up on the screen. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about these new Gravely EV range from about as behind the scenes and as secretive a perspective as you possibly could have. All right, so we are back. Now we've got a video on the screen, and Ben is going to run us through this video. I'm going to give the floor to him, and he's going to explain what is special about the Gravely this new EV. Throw it away, Ben.
All right. So the Gravely EV is the only EV currently on the market with interchangeable batteries. So what that means is you can remove the batteries from the rear of the machine, and you can potentially have batteries in a charger offside of the machine charging to increase run times. You can also have the machine potentially wear out before the life of the batteries and just replace the machine without having to replace the batteries, which helps reduce the cost of these machines. So as shown there on the video, you can see they're very easy to remove. They're quite big batteries. There's 4 of them. Okay, each one at the moment is carrying 4 kilowatt hours. So they're 4 kilowatt hour batteries each. There is talk of that being increased, but there is a fast off-board charger that you can purchase as an accessory and carry up to another 4 batteries in a separate charger, with the ideal situation to get 8 hours of mowing time. Currently with the 16 kilowatt hours, where in certain conditions we're getting 4 to sort of 6 hours. It's very, very, very much determined by the load that the machine's under and how fast and hard you're driving it. What we really liked about the ProTurn EV from Gravely compared to other machines on the market is Gravely actually make and own the IPs for all of the components essentially that are making this machine a mower. So wheel motors, drive motors, all those sorts of things are actually their own design, They own the IP behind it, and they are made to make the mower feel like a mower rather than just picking an electric motor off the shelf and bolting it onto a chassis. Mm-hmm. And that is what makes machines significantly different to every other machine on the market. Now, we have got some new products coming into market right now where other manufacturers are starting to catch up to Gravely, but Gravely had these machines on the market 4 years ago.
Gee.
They took a significant amount of time to get them to meet the requirements for Australian standard approval, which is why we're really only starting to talk about these right now. So I'm showing you on screen right now, that's one of the replacement batteries. You can press a button to see how their charge levels individually. There is a little screen on the side of the machine that shows you. You can see here 4 fit neatly into the rear of the machine. So it's basically 4 cassette style batteries, not too dissimilar to your battery handheld product. You can remove a battery and put it back in. And its onboard management system efficiently draws the power from each of those batteries and does that in a way in which it's using sort of 2 at a time. So you can take 2 out and then put 2 fully charged ones back in, allowing you to be able to keep going and go and get that extra kilowatt hour time if need be. The machine is able to be charged on board as well, so you don't need the accessory charger, but there is a fast charger available for those machines. Okay, they're saying that these batteries, yes, they are expensive, but they are good for over 1,000 charge cycles. It actually states here on screen that after 1,000 charge cycles, the batteries will still be at 75% maximum capacity. So if you look at 1,000 charge cycles on a machine, those batteries will still be good enough for you to purchase a replacement skin, essentially, which will be significantly cheaper than the upfront cost of the machine, including the batteries. We're just going to get through this. I'm sorry.
So for those listening, because when Ben is pausing and he's speaking, it's because he's scrolling through this sales training. So if you're listening, he's going, what's going on here? Why did he stop talking? It's not me pulling rude fingers at him or something. But anyways, you take it away, Ben.
Yeah, so that's just on screen there. You've got a 360-degree view of what the wheel motors look like. It goes through that there is a dual speed. So there is actually a switch allowing you to swap between 8 miles an hour and 11 miles per hour. We actually are recommending, there's not a lot of difference in that speed from a user perspective. And on ground that's not level, so not straight park mowing, but places with slopes, we're recommending people to go back to 8 miles per hour just to take a little bit of pressure off those wheel motors. And it really helps with not only the machine staying cool, but it also helps with the battery life as such. So, the low speed is not 2 miles an hour. There's only 3 miles an hour difference, and you really can't feel it. And 11 miles per hour on one of these machines is quite fast. What does that convert to?
It's getting close to 20, maybe 17, 18.
Yeah, they are very, very, very fast. And the comfort of the machine, you can only mow to the comfort of the machine anyway. And 8 miles per hour on these machines is perfectly sufficient for what we're sort of wanting them to do.
People, if you've been enjoying this Makers Month series, we're in the second half of it now. If you've been loving that, the reality is that has only been able to happen or been able to be produced because of the Patreons. You may not know this, but the work that goes behind the scenes is insane. We've been doing sort of 11 p.m., 12 p.m. finishes pretty much every day since this series started, and a little bit before that, to be honest, as well. And here's the thing, I'm not editing these podcasts at all. We have an editor now. So it's just a sheer amount of work. If you're enjoying this and you've been listening to them, we're not getting paid by the brands. This is trying to be as unbiased as possible. And so people, if you like this series, jump on the Patreon. we need that support because at the end of the series, there won't be anything left, any money left. So going forward, we need some of that support. So people jump on if you're enjoying it. Become a patron. You become $5 a month, or you can give $5 a month, or $16.50. Now, if you say that's not within my means, totally fine. No judgment, no pressure. But if it's within your means and you are enjoying it, then go for that. Now, a way that you can support without the money is to share on social media. Help us get more people who listen, more people who watch. And anyways, I want to say thank you to those patrons because honestly, I can't handle too many more of these late nights. So thanks for supporting and paying for that editor. Anyways, let's get back in the podcast. So while you're looking at there, I've got some thoughts. I've got some thoughts as you're scrolling through this training. The rechargeable, not rechargeable, replaceable batteries, in theory, completely removes the need to worry about runtime if you're working at a place that has an electric socket. So if you're working at a commercial facility, a school, if you're doing really rural work, and this would be not that much of the market really. If you're doing very rural work, you wouldn't have electricity there. You might, but even then, if you had solar power or some other, basically you could have it charged overnight, have a spare 2 batteries on board at all times. So you could be the same thing. Like I was doing this yesterday with my handheld products as you're still scrolling through this, but I was charging a batteries while I was doing a job at someone's house. It's just, a blower battery. So, you're not as significant or not as large, but that as a concept completely removes range anxiety as long as you have a charging station. I can totally understand. Even if I was thinking, as you were saying, those batteries are running out of charge, so after 1,000 cycles would have around 75% of their capacity left. If they were your backup ones, it wouldn't matter because you would just leave them on the ute, and you might only need 20% to be used. So you ready to take it away? You found the next thing you wanted to show on here?
No, so I'm just, while you're talking there, that's the off-board fast charger. So that's your remote charging station for up to batteries. So that is available as an accessory.
How big is that? Sorry
to
cut you off, but how big is that? Because that looks like it's about the size of a, like it's a trolley, like it's a...
Yeah, it is. And those batteries aren't small. Those batteries, they weigh just under 20 kilos. They're big batteries. They're big.
They look about the size that for those listening, they look about the size of a standard commercial 20-liter drum. If anyone's bought fertilizers or herbicides in those 20-liter drums, would that be about what you would say?
Yeah, that's about the size, or one of those medium bins. The square lid bins. I'd like them sort of
office bin sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, they're about 20, just on 20 kilos each, and they remove from the back of the machine. So the back of the machine is similar to this, like they're all about the same size. So the fast charger then, or that remote charger, is the same size as the machine. You can actually see on this video here as he removes them, you can see there it's a significant piece of kit.
Now, what you told me when we weren't recording is that the price of this mower comes with these 4 batteries. Is that right? And
yeah, so the retail price we display for the EV comes with 4 batteries standard. That doesn't include that remote charging station. It includes the standard onboard charging station, but not the fast charger.
So basically, like you would buy with a Tesla or something like that, you get the batteries on board. You can plug your mower into the wall, essentially, is what I'm guessing. And so that's the basic level. Now, we'll talk about the price of the mower. No, let's start with that. You said there's 6 options technically. So do you want to run through them? Yes.
Yep. So if you swap to, hang on, I'll just swap the screen
to put the
There are 6 machines essentially. So there's a 48, a 52, and a 60-inch side discharge, and then there's a 48 to and a 60-inch rear discharge. Now, rear discharge machines use a lot less energy to cut grass. because the grass is just cut and then falls straight to the ground. They're also great for roadside because you have no throw. There is a significant power saving in using a rear discharge machine, because the machine is not having to throw the grass from the left spindle to the middle to the right. So that's why we run rear discharge. Gravely actually don't offer a rear discharge in petrol, only in the ED range.
What effect does it?
So we have 6.
Sorry, what effect does it have on cut quality?
Cut quality, it doesn't change because cut quality is determined by blade tip speed and how well you maintain your blades. But it does sort of allow for more debris to be left behind if the grass is long. So trying to mow 3 inches of grass, a side discharge machine, you can continue to blow that grass away. With a rear discharge machine, those stalks are just going to be left behind the machine as it's mowing. That's really the big differences there. But again, a lot of these machines, especially council work or people that are looking for, that sort of machine to do, I suppose, that politically driven machine, that those rear discharges are good at in front of everyone and they're not throwing and doing those sorts of things.
Well, another thought that I've got coming to my head is I talked about this actually when we did the Toro podcast and we were talking about Toro's battery stuff. But I should have mentioned this with everybody else who's got battery ride-ons, but I forgot that in WA, and I may get this law wrong, so people don't sue me, but I believe that when you have a total fire ban, or there's certain levels of fire ban where you're not allowed to use petrol equipment, but you can use battery. And a rear discharge would be a very interesting, because like you're saying, like long overgrown stuff probably doesn't look so good. But if you're mowing paddocks and you can use your battery machine to do those paddocks legally because there's less fire risk because of a hot exhaust, all the sort of stuff, that may be a really good option for somebody. And again, if you're doing paddocks and you care about runtime, you don't care about finish, but might be different at school, might want the side discharge. But yeah, there you go. You've got some options.
We do. And if I can jump to these wheel motors, there's a thing with most of the battery machines that I've operated, and some of the newer ones are definitely starting to get this right. But there's a definite lag between the controller usage and how the machine responds. And that's because these wheel motors aren't designed for this operation, whereas in the case of these Gravely EVs, these wheel motors are next generation. They are built, they're brushless, they have got a dual reduction planetary gearbox in them, so they actually perform very similar to the Hydra Gear Tough Torque / Parker drives that we're used to. So the feeling in the machine is much more aligned with what you're currently used to. So that is a big thing. Now, there is still a difference between a petrol-driven hydraulic and an electric over hydraulic. So they are a little bit more twitchy, definitely, but there's definitely a really good feel about these machines, and they are worth actually getting on and testing how smooth and how comfortable they are. Gravely's big sell on these machines is that the wheel motors and spindles are designed by Gravely as a mower manufacturer to use on lawnmowers. Okay, so both the wheel motors and the spindle motors are a big factor in these machines, and some of the newer manufacturers, or some of the newer to market in the battery space, Toro and a few of these guys are starting to get there, but that's definitely not the norm, and a couple of the other ones, it's definitely worth testing that out. Now, if we go to the spindle motors, a big positive that Gravely have in the spindle motors is, one, they're 3.5 kilowatt hours, so they give you a crazy top speed, but they also allow the blades to slip. Now, I don't know of a market currently, and there may be a new one that I'm not aware of, but the majority of them, the biggest issue we're seeing with battery zero turns is impact damage to the blade is damaging the drive shaft on these electric spindle motors. And once you damage the shaft, you have to replace the entire motor, which is incredibly expensive. Whereas with the Gravely machine, if you impact something heavily, as shown,
So we could hear that, but do you want to play that while I was talking and put it on the actual?
I can. Well, do you want me to play it with sound?
Well, I mean, if it explains it well,
what you
because
mean?
this is a training video. If it explains it well, then
does,
we can
yeah.
just press play and.
Yeah.
We get the idea there. That's getting into the maintenance side of it, but that's fascinating. So it's replicating the slip that you would get on a belt from an electric motor.
Yes. Yep. Which also means that the center shafts or the center spindles are removable and can be replaced. So if you do sustain some damage or you do have a major impact, you're not up for, and those motors are not cheap. I think they're over $2,000. So if you were to say what's the big differences between petrol zero turns and battery zero turns, the big risk you have is the electric drive motors and the electric spindle, deck and spindle motors. That's going to be the highest cost of replacing items like this. Whereas if you break a spindle on a petrol-driven machine, they're generally a cast item that is designed to break. That's your weak point on the machine. They're like the sacrificial anode almost. So Gravely machine still allows you to use those spindles as exactly that, which you don't need to replace the entire spindle motor like you do with all, as far as I'm aware, most of the other competitors. I'm not aware of another one out there that has that.
I've got a couple of questions if I can step in there. So about $2,000 to replace the motor is what you're trying to save. Is this all stuff that you could, as the owner, maintain yourself? Because I know sometimes when people start talking about motors, there might be, because of electricity and the amount of power put into them. Is this something that, like, say the spindle itself is just a part you can get because you're not actually getting into the electronic side of it, is what I'm thinking about there?
No, I think with these products and this space, definitely need to take it back to the dealer. The dealers that sell and service these have to go through a very vigorous training program. That training program really, it's very in depth, and you need to make sure that the right connectors are unplugged and the right components are disconnected before you start playing in these spaces. Not only, heaven forbid, one accidentally turns on, but you don't want to short the circuit out. And the computer systems are very complex. So I'm displaying on screen there the computer screen that's actually on the dash, which goes through. It shows you, everything from battery, where your batteries are sitting, how they're sitting, how the remaining. You've got a unit diagnostic system, so it will tell you if there's an issue with any part of that system. All of that's displayed there, but it all comes up in codes. So you need to have the training to be able to know what those codes are showing. So I would hate for someone to go under, try and replace a spindle shaft on their own, and then it starts sending fault codes. One thing about electric machines is once they send a fault code and they're not operational, it's not like a petrol-driven machine where you can disconnect the belts and you can just push them along. Nearly immobile.
You kind of need a forklift or something.
It is a little bit. Yeah, it is something that they need to be able to freewheel.
So another thing that was coming to mind with the motors, you talked that they were, was it 3,500 kilowatt hours? No, so kilowatt would be the 3.5
so
kilowatt.
The kilowatts on the spindles, you mean? So they're 3.5 kilowatt spindles.
Yeah.
Which I think the tire machines they're the first one to come out with a higher kilowatt spindle, like feel, or they're not higher, they're about, I can't remember exactly, but they're significantly higher than at 3.5 than the other machines on the market.
Now, we didn't talk about price. We started talking about models, and we were just about to mention price. So what is the price point of these? I mean, there's 6 models here.
Well, so I hope everyone's sitting down because they are significantly more expensive than a petrol machine. So you starting in your 50s, okay, so $50,000, but that does include 4 batteries and a charger. And these are proper commercial machines. So you've got a 7-gauge proper fabricated deck, tubular bent frames. They are a true commercial quality machine. 6-inch steep decks, all that sort of stuff. So you're sort of looking at that 52,000. The three machines would go up $500 per deck size.
Now, I will say as well that in a minute, we're going to pause this again, and I'm going to put a calculator on the screen. And it's an American calculator, so it's gallons of fuel and American dollars. But we've already done all the conversions for you, and so we're going to put that on the screen. But I will also have a link to that calculator so that you can, in the video description or the podcast description, so that you can do that maths yourselves. You just have to calculate or convert to US dollars. And Ben, we didn't talk about this before, but probably should get your fancy tech guys to put that in the Australian stuff. Now, is there any of these in the country yet? Because this is...
Yeah, we've got stock. We've sold units. There is units in the field. They're performing very well. Like I said before, using them in the slower speed mode here is definitely helping is the runtime. And now with this rain on the East Coast, we're going to get a really good indication of how they perform under a heavy load. I would say that we haven't had any in the field sort of with the conditions that we have here on the East Coast now. So we're seeing some fantastic growing conditions here now. It'll be really interesting to see how they perform. I'm excited for it. They're a very comfortable machine to drive. They're very easy to operate. They are incredibly quiet. It freaks a lot of people out that test drive them because when you turn the key to turn them on, you cannot hear that they're on. And if the machine doesn't beep at you, you don't. It's very easy to forget that you've got your ignition on. Obviously, blades spinning at the speed that the blades spin at, you can hear those. But the noise reduction is a serious amount of reduction in that noise, and speed in which these mow at it's up there. You know, you're looking at 17, nearly 18 kilometers an hour they'll mow, so you can and 9 kilometers in reverse. So they are a very fast little machine, and I think to do parks and that sort of work, they are really well suited to that sort of space.
Here's another little left field question. I don't know if you've been asked this before, but because there's not many out there. Do Gravely do powered or belt powered blowers for a catcher? Sorry, a blower that throws into the bagger at the back. So do they do that for the petrol models?
So every Gravely catcher, right down to the small consumer machines, is powered.
So can you get an equivalent?
Sorry,
I cut you off there.
What? Yeah. You're right. There's no catcher for the
So you
EV.
can get I'm assuming you can get a
Um,
side bagger like a Catch Pro on the side.
yeah, so we actually, for City of Sydney, have demoed. We actually have two in Sydney with Catch Pros on
So,
them.
but it's not.
Yep.
I'm thinking about someone who. It's. I doubt you would know the number. There's not many people buy those assisted catches. It wouldn't be the most common thing. Most people would just get the mower as it is. But it's just a question somebody might ask.
I feel that I really feel that catches in the Australian conditions just aren't the right. Walker really have that down pack. In if you really want that beautiful finish with a catched wall, I suppose. But mulching, and if you're on a regular motorcycle and you're keeping that grass under control, mulching is actually better for the grass anyway. So you can put a mulch plug on those machines. You can run mulching blades, and you can get that clipped-in content right down with that. It actually helps keep the grass healthy. I really recommend people to go that way when they're looking for that. There's no catcher option available for it for these at the moment. The catch we do sell with catchers. I always feel that you're adding another belt on a blower driven catcher. It's a large piece of equipment to be hanging out the side of the machine up to the increases the width of the machine significantly. And with a blower with a blower on the catcher, you can't take it off easy. It stops the tubes from locking, definitely, but most of the time we're trying to take 3 to 4 inches of actual leaf off the ground. Our grass grows that fast when we're doing that. It's very rare that you're sort of only tipping and taking that 1 or 2 mil off, and that's what they're really designed to do. They're not really designed to take the volume of grass that we're trying to feed through into them, and that's where we really see the issues.
Well, not to bring up your ex-girlfriend in the podcast, but Hustler, who you guys used to stock, I had a Fast Track 36 a few years ago, and I bought a power assisted blower for it. And so that back in the day, that would have been technically through you guys. And yes, I can definitely confirm that when you do put those assisted blowers on the side, and I now own a Walker, my opinion is that if you kind of, what we have now is a stand-on with a Catch Pro and a Walker. If you're going to do a lot of catching, you're 100% right that you're putting a little bit more weight on the side. So you've got to change how the this is on the Hustler at least, how the deck was mounted. You've got this. I bought a 36-inch because it was nimble and small, and all of a sudden you put an extra, almost a foot, maybe 15, 20 centimeters at least of something on the side that is bolted on. And the other thing as well is it is worse at catching longer grass than a Walker is. And a lot of people Correct. Say that a Gianni Ferrari is even better for long grass than a Walker is. And, I have no reason to disagree with that. Not that I've specifically driven one, but it's not horrible. It works. It definitely works, and it's way better than if your option is I've already got the machine. I'm talking belt driven, and I can spend a few $1,000s getting this, or I get a Catch Pro and I've got to empty it 30 or 40 times because it's a big contract. Yeah, value for money is there for sure. So it's not, I guess that's why people would buy it. But if you were going to go out to buy a dedicated catching machine, you kind of say you should buy a dedicated catching machine. Is kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, and I think that if you buy a dedicated catching machine, you need to be tipping max, even with the Walkers. You don't want to be going into long grass. I haven't driven a Gianni Ferrari machine to know, so I have no experience in that space, but I do, the really nice finished, really, really high quality finish lawns, you should never be taking more than a third of the leaf off the plant. So when you're mowing with a cylinder mower, the lawns look amazing, and the reason they look so good is because of the fact that you're actually cutting the blade of grass, not slashing it. So every rider mower is still slashing that blade of grass. They all have a blade that's spinning. They're not actually cutting, unless you're using a greens mower with a cylinder on it. And ever take more than a third of that leaf off. If you take more than a third of the leaf off, the leaf goes yellow, and you get that little yellowing tinge, and that's short of trying to catch the leaf, which is all you're trying to do with a catcher. What I'm saying is, to get that really nice look, you really want to just be tipping that grass. You don't want to be going in, and that just doesn't happen here. People are taking, in a good week, that grass is growing an inch in the growing season, and no one's going to be out on their rider mower 3 times a week. It just doesn't happen. So
Exactly. Well,
that's sort of what I'm getting at there. So we're trying to get the volume of grass up into the back. Through the center on those walkers is a fantastic way to do that. If they're designed for it, it is very good. And that's, perfect. Thank you.
That's what they're there for.
Why I sort of that recommendation.
And you don't even sell them. Like, this is technically speaking a competitor. So the Giannis and the Walkers would be a competitor to what you guys are doing. And so this just does.
Yeah.
I'll say as well that so with the Walker that I have, which is the highest model that they can do, and it's got the multi-deck option there. I can put the mulching plug on if I wanted to and do a double cut. The other thing that I do sometimes for people with overgrown, I'm just talking about this from an advice standpoint. If somebody is looking for a catching machine, they are very expensive machines. So they are kind of, what's the word? I think they're $60,000 now for a high-end walker. I saw someone post that on LMCA the other day. You can get them secondhand, but look, and Gianni Ferraris are more expensive, I believe, for the equivalent size. But look, what I'm getting at the end of the day is, people, if you wanted to go down the path of catching and you're doing a lot of long stuff, even with the walker, when we've done long stuff, we've actually cut it first with a hustler to reduce the height down, and kind of you chuck everything in a pile, and then you'll do a double cut with a walker to reduce that pile, because you can't force too much stuff through that tube, essentially.
We actually recommend that. It's amazing how many people, your deck is only 6 inches high, so say this high. You go into 5 inches of grass, and the left spindle, or your left-hand side, is moving that entire volume across the width of the blade into the center pulley. So you're essentially doubling the volume by the time you get there. So if you're taking more than that much off, you really need to be realistically for the machine. Now, some machines do it, and some machines do it very well. There's a Mach 1 in the Gravely range, which is a high flow deck. Their discharge it's nearly 11 inches high.
Right.
And it's designed for doing that. There is machines out there for that, but my point is if you're in any machine, if that's the height of your deck and you're trying to take that much grass, you're going to clog the deck. They just can't do it. So you need to double cut in that instance as well. It's amazing how many people will probably argue that point and say, "Oh, my machine I can put it through." And yes, you can. If you go slow, you're allowed to clear that. But if you look at a machine that's designed to be mowing at 17 kilometers an hour, you have no hope in mowing any more than 4 or 5 mil of grass at those sorts of speeds, because you need to get the volume of grass out. And that's a big thing for decks in this country with us, and that's a big challenge that we have as a company in getting that deck design right. And if I can talk to that, the X Factor 3 deck on the Gravely's, jumping from Hustler, and yes, it's our ex-girlfriend, but it's a fantastic machine. It was very well built under X when it was family owned and operated itself. Jumping from that deck and being very familiar with that to the X Factor 3 on the Gravely machines, having the twin belt system that Gravely use, which they don't run a single belt to a center pulley and then out to the two sides. They actually run the center pulley and the left-hand spindle off of one belt, and then run a cog belt It's not timed, it's just cogged to the discharge side. And the way the deck actually works is the left and the center throw below the discharge side. It's amazing how much that actually allows for. I'm going to have to go out and check that they don't.
Your lights have just been turned off. It's late in the afternoon over there. I'm going to pause this. You go to make sure that people are going to put the alarms on while you're sitting there, and we'll talk about this deck.
Cheers.
All right, we're back. So Ben has prevented the security nightmare of somebody putting the alarm on him. You were talking about it was the X Factor 3 deck and why it is good.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a twin belt system, and that cog drive belt doesn't allow for much slippage at all on the discharge side. So as your deck loads up, it's really, really efficient at discharging that grass. And it's something that really needs to be trialed to see how good it is. I'm familiar with, especially on some of our ex-girlfriend type ranges, the 48-inch machines really with that center spindle, because all the load ends up on the middle pulley, and the machine is being driven from that center pulley. So giving them those two options and having that real direct drive to that discharge helps those gravely machines clear long grass very, very well. It was a big surprise to me. And the other thing, just while I'm there, when you look at a Gravely, the first thing that draws everyone's attention is the handles, and the way the handles are. I feel everyone looks at that, and I know I did when I first looked at them as well. It's an interesting story that Gravely want you to be able to exit the machine at any time in operation. So Gravely's, you do not need those handlebars to come back to center and then lock out to be able to open. You can fold those open at any time. So if you get yourself in any trouble on a Gravely machine, you can just stand up and walk out. So if that's sliding down a hill, if there's something you don't like, you can just stand up and walk out. If something happens, you're not stuck into that there. I've seen some pretty serious accidents where guys have hit concrete tubing, especially roadside mowing, and the handlebars are actually impacting in their chests. As that, I don't know many people that wear a seatbelt. If you're wearing a seatbelt, that won't happen. But as you get thrown forward, those handles on the Gravely machines will fly open. Yes, you'll get thrown out of the machine, but it's not going to do damage on the way past. A couple of things there that I feel don't get spoken about enough, and they're two really good features on the machines. That X Factor 3 deck is available from the ZT HD and up. So, and that is, obviously there's no belts on an EV, but it's that machine is the base platform for the EV as well. So their entry-level commercial machines all the way to their top-end machines run that twin belt system.
And you said before as well that the blade tip speed on the battery is the same as the petrol. Is that right?
Yeah, so I actually have that spec. Ways to Proton EV.
Just looking for it, people. So we'll give him I've got some thoughts while you're looking for that as well. Oh, you go.
18,000 feet per minute, which a petrol machine is 18,200. So yes, so the same as a petrol machine. Okay, the only one that has a speed than that is the Mach 1, which is a petrol-driven machine. The Mach 1 is actually Gravely's equivalent to the Everride Warrior. And if anyone has been in the industry for a very long time, I remember back we actually used to be the distributor for Everride. The Everride Warrior was only ever a 60-inch machine. It was the best cutting and clearing machine we ever had the luxury of distributing. And Gravely Purple Aaron's Co. bought that machine, and now we've been able to relaunch that here as the Mach 1. It has a very high tip speed, and it has an incredibly high discharge, and it's a tunnel deck. So John Deere actually used tunnel decks on their out fronts, which are primarily stamped decks. So the deck actually has a ramp from left-hand side through to discharge and gradually increases in size. So if we go back to my original comments around volume of grass to a 6-inch deep deck, if you can lift the height of that deck each time you get to a blade, you're allowing the volume of
Yep.
grass from that left spindle to travel to the center much without putting any pressure on the belt. And that Mac 1, you can see there how high that rubber chute is. And that is that machine. And that is actually a fab deck. It's the only fab tunnel deck that I'm aware of. I think the Toro 360s might have done something similar to it for a little while, but yeah, that's the only fab tunnel deck that I'm aware of. All the rest of the tunnel decks are pressed. Just they can't get that increase in volume. And that machine there, I have personally driven into probably 5 feet of grass, obviously slow, and cut it in one pass to 2 inches.
What, like weedy grass
That's just
or
slashing. What? I can send you the videos if you'd like.
Interesting.
That's true.
Sure, I've only.
But yeah, that's your rough cut mower for slashing and doing those really tough overgrown jobs. And if you're doing a lot of overgrown jobs,
so when I'm looking at this photo here, right? Can you see that on the screen there, Ben? Are you talking about the tunnel being the gap between the blade and the front of this deck here?
No, so that's your leading edge to the front. So that's
what I'm looking at here for people, so I can describe it, is there seems to the deck is very different in that the chute, you know, how people, as you've bought a ride on, you've seen them in the shop, the rubber chute just comes out straight from the top. There's a lot more space above the blade height or where it's cutting from than there is on a normal one. There's quite a lot of opening at the top. I hope I'm describing that rightly. There also seems to be a lot of space at the front of the blade here. Sorry. You go, Ben.
If you look there at the rear, that rear piece below the spindle, that piece right there, that's 6 inches. So if you look at the step up, it's about 11 that it goes
so the back of the deck, for those who are listening, is 6 inches, like a normal kind of deck. And the front of the deck, the front half, is about 11 inches. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
And that allows more space for the grass to come through.
Yeah, and I've just sent you the video. I'll try and see if you can get that up. It's the big files. I don't know if you
Where
can
did you
get
send
it
me
up
to? Message?
Send it
via
via email.
When that comes through, I will be able to put that on the screen. So, but yeah, so it's a this is one of the things that I've not really known about, right? Like, so when I bought Hustler, right, and I don't know if it's we're crossing professional boundaries here by talking about your ex-girlfriend, as I mentioned before. But I've had 2 Hustlers in the past, and I just bought them because that was at my local shop, essentially. And I've always been like that, right? Craig from Armadale Mower World or the guys at Coastline. When somebody, you know, sends me, when I go there, I just say, hey, I want this, what should I get? They talk about this. And sometimes they've talked to me and they say, well, here's the thing about this deck here, which is interesting. And it kind of goes over my head. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I get the difference between press deck and a fabricated deck. I get how one's stronger. But I can see here now for those, if you're doing long grass, it makes more sense that there is a lot of space, like we were talking about before, for grass to be shot to the side here. I've got your video through now, so let me see. I'm going to pause this and I'll see what I can do with the interwebs and get this on the screen. All right, people, we're back and I've got a video on the screen. And yes, this is my Facebook. That's the best way we could do it. So if anyone's going to send me a message in the next couple of minutes, you're going to probably get on the podcast. All right, but I'm going to press play on this video down here. For those who are watching, now I can hear this, bloody hell, Luke. Mute that. All right, you guys can't hear it. But look, we've got, is this you on the mower there, Ben? That's you, right?
That's me on the mower.
And there are sections that, like you said, were very, very tall. You are smashing out some long stuff. look, if people are interested, you will have to jump on YouTube to see this in action. Genuinely cutting down some really thick grass here. And I'm going to go into the next one here because that was also, this is the Mark 1 or the Mach 1 you were saying.
Correct. Mach 1, yeah. So that's the tunnel deck. You cannot do that on a 6-inch standard. So we do a 560 and a 660, which is the same machine essentially with the normal conventional decks that we run. You won't get that sort of discharge in that sort of grass. And as you can see, it's leaving a good enough finish in that moment. Like to get to that grass is up to the bend in the rocks to give you some sort of idea of how high that actually is.
I'd say it's about 60 centimeters to a meter, 1.2, depending on which section you're cutting. And then there are tufts there that are, like you said, probably up to the 1.5, 5 foot kind of mark. But what's impressing me, I got to describe this to people. I have done long grass like this before. Obviously, we've all sort of had jobs like this in the past, and there are no little windrows of lines that happen between the two blades or the 3 blades, depending on the size of the deck. It's not just pushing down the grass, it's actually cutting it. I actually did a similar. I've used John Deere's and stuff like that, Hustlers, and it depends on your speed, but you're going pretty good. You're going pretty good there, as in you're not slow, and so you're not fast. You are slowing down. It's not full berries, but it's not. Anyways, people get the idea. So if you're interested, jump on this. Look at it for yourself on YouTube. And now I've got to run through this. Now we do have time pressure. It has taken, while we've been recorded for 55 minutes, we have taken time to do the background stuff. So what I'm going to show you people is this American calculator we talked about before. The price range for these mowers, I'm going to run through this and describe it for you, and I'll put a link in the description. The price range on here is saying 35.8, but that is a representation of the 52-inch in Australian to American conversion, and that was 52,000, I think you said, or something like that before. He's getting that number up for us. It was something around that, people. Message them, forget it. I'm going to describe this for people. There is no extra accessory costs for the batteries because the batteries at that price are included. This calculator is going to calculate the price of the mower and compare it to a gasoline-powered, if you're American, equivalent with the price of the petrol and the running costs compared to our cost per kilowatt, routine maintenance, and your hours mowed per year. So let me run you through these numbers. So we've got $35,800 for the mower with the batteries. We haven't added any other batteries, so there's no other accessory costs on there. It says $50, but that's because that's the minimum that we could do. The gasoline-powered mower price equivalent in Australian dollars, you said was $18,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's comparing that to what that base machine is based off, which is a ZTHD. Most people that are spending this sort of money on an EV would be buying a larger machine, the 54600 series, but just for the purposes of this, I've compared it for exactly the same machine. So that is a lighter petrol machine than what most people would be buying for the same sort of. But it's good to do the comparison fairly, I think.
There we go. So it's 12,000 US is what I've got in this calculator, but that is the equivalent. So it's got 35,000 US for the EV and 12,000 US for the petrol powered. Now, the fuel price, we've gone at $2 per litre Australian. That works out to about $7.40 per gallon, which is like massively more than what they actually pay for in America. It's like cheap stuff. And we're doing 19 cents per kilowatt, but remember that is US dollars. Australian dollars, that's about 28 cents. So we're comparing, I'll just run through it again. In Australian dollars, it's about a $50,000 mower compared to about an $18,000 mower in petrol. We're doing $2 a litre fuel price and about 28 cents per kilowatt, which is the national average for electricity. And then for routine maintenance, yes, this is in American dollars. We've done $4 per hour of runtime. Now, what we've worked out is a $600 service every 100 hours. I know that some of you would service it every 50 at the shop, but some of it you do it yourself. Some of it you take into the shop. That's my estimation there, not Ben's. So if you don't like that, throw me under the bus. And then we've got the hours mode per year, which is at 800, which works out to not really that much, to be honest, for the course of the year. So what are we looking at here? Initial price difference, you're paying $23,000 more for that mower, electric. But you are saving $17 per hour. So that means if you're doing 800 hours a year, you're going to save $14,000 US per year. If you are only going to do, I'm going to drag down the hours. If you are only going to do 200 hours a year of mowing, right, which is about 4 hours a week over the course of the year. So this is a very part-time machine. You are still saving $3,500 per year over the life of the machine. And if you're going to do all the way up to 2,000 hours, which is like 40 hours a week of cutting time, which is, in my opinion, fairly unrealistic because you've got travel and whipping and all that sort of stuff. But hey, look, if you're working 7 days, then maybe that's possible. But you would save $35,000 a year. You can do these calculations yourself, people. Now, we've got to wrap this podcast up. But Ben, is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation? If not, could you please end with a rendition of Celine Dion? Or is that asking too much?
No, I can't do that. But I do. You have missed the bottom slide.
Oh, sorry. That's right.
Where you're allowed to, and a lot of people are charging, particularly in government contracts, where you are allowed to charge a premium for the green aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So, and I think you could charge an extra $5 or $10 US per hour because you're running a green machine. So that, if you do that, that significantly lowers that down. I think if you run the slide back, I think safely 1,000 hours a year would probably be a nice average. So if you went 1,000 hours there and then back to $5 extra per hour, if you have a look there, you've broken even in, what is that? 10 months. So inside a year, you've broken even on that machine. And that is basing that off a very low-cost commercial machine.
So I think
basing that off of.
I think you got the numbers there on around. So the initial price difference is $23,800, and the savings per year is $17,500. So it would take about 14 or 15 months to break even if you're mowing at that rate.
Okay. I thought it said down the bottom there. 10.
Oh no, it does actually. It does. How am I getting that wrong? I don't know. Oh, it's probably
I think it said 14 before at 0. So if you drop the premium price difference back to 0, I think it was 14.
12.
If you're not able to charge.
Yeah. I see what it's
basically that's a yeah. Okay, so they're interesting sums. Obviously, costs of service is different, travel time, all that sort of stuff. It's not included in that, but it's just interesting. It's an interesting thing to look at.
Well, when I
outside of that.
Well, when I looked at the 200 hours, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if you have one contract, you can start with one contract and it will cost you more money in the first year because of the initial price difference. But I guess if you're financing it, it probably doesn't really matter. The operational costs savings will probably come out in the wash with the finance interest costs that you incur per year. In fact, you may come out as a benefit. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is somebody could buy this for one individual contract with the idea of winning more and more and more over time. And yes, you might not be profiting off that first contract, or you may make tiny bits of money from the electric savings, but over the long run, you can do that. And I do think it's fascinating that those, and I think a lot of people are going to be most interested by those interchangeable batteries, because I have heard some criticisms of other brands that because you cannot change everything, you have to replace the entire machine after several years. And the range anxiety, things we've talked about before. People, we've got to wrap up this podcast. So goodbye. Thank you for coming on. And we actually have a little bonus that we're going to record just now with Ben about some cylinder mower stuff. So people, these are exclusive announcements. We're going to talk about that in the next podcast. Thank you for listening. And here's a little extra bonus one for you.